It is Monday, April 20th. I am calling to order the Town of Norton Charter Commission. Everyone is in attendance remotely. Shane is recording this meeting, as am I. And that's it. We'll call to order. So we have to accept the minutes of the meeting of Monday, April 6th, 2020 that were distributed by Sandy. If there's no questions or updates, I will take a motion to accept the minutes of our meeting of Monday, April 6th, 2020. It was a nice short one.
Oh. I don't think I got them. Sandy, you just sent them to the Norton mailbox?
Yeah, sorry, I did. I forgot about
Okay. I'll just, withhold my vote on this one so I can get a chance to review it. I'm sure it's perfect.
They usually are.
Yes.
All right. I'm sorry. Who made the motion? Was that Keith?
No, it was, I'll make a motion.
All right. Raise your hand if you're going to make a motion. All right. Keith made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Janie seconded. Any further discussion? Okay. Denise is going to abstain. Dave Heaney, you are in agreement of agree to accept the minutes of the 6th. That is a yes. David Wren?
Yes.
Carrie Schneider?
Yes.
Kevin Steiker?
Yes.
Keith Silver?
Yes.
Janie Goodwin? Sandy Allahead?
Yes.
I also say yes. The minutes of April 6th have been accepted. All right, moving on. Nobody from the public is here, so we're going to close public comment. The next item is an admin and a update on item number 5. I would love to tell you that I have been withholding a draft charter, and we're going to surprise you with it, but I do not. I actually don't have an update from Town Council since the last time I updated you. That is not without a couple of attempts to get an update. However, I think we're probably still okay if we get one soon. But I am going to place a call and have a serious discussion with Lauren, and all I can do is apologize and try and keep pushing. However, Sandy was actually successful with the help of Michael Toole in getting us a quick conference call with Senator Sweeney, and that took place back on the 16th of April, and he very graciously gave us 10 minutes. We explained our situation in that we have a statutory deadline under Mass General Law that Town Council has advised we may not get the attention of the Attorney General, given the fact that I think we might be the only charter commission currently operating within the state, and that our Town Council has been, hang on, looks like Dave Wren is looking to get in.
Yeah. If you had a second, I was going to ask you. I think I can get in.
I saw you beeping up there. Okay, you should be, there you are.
I am.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
Okay. So, I had explained the situation that a lot of our deadlines are set are triggered off of our election date. We've got specific deadlines, 16 months from election, 18 months from election, and there are various deadlines that are triggered off of those specific provisions, and said that, you know, our town council was the one who was drafting the charter. He knew who our town council was, knew how involved she was in other municipalities, and that she was inundated with, you know, town meeting changes, COVID-19 legislation and requests and things of that nature, and that we may be in jeopardy of falling behind, and we would like to not do so. Given that our timeline allows for a little bit of a cushion, meaning from 18 months from the election to the point of where the town votes on the charter recommendations is fairly lengthy. There seems to be enough time in there to maybe allow for a 30 to 60 day extension of a few of those provisions, deadlines within the home rule procedures. Told him about that. He said, made a recommendation, kind of a 3-step process, the first of which he recommended that we draft a letter to the Attorney General, coming from the chair, just a blanket letter explaining our situation and asking for, he made a recommendation that we go big and ask for the 60 days rather than just do a 30-day and then potentially need another one. So ask for a 30-day extension to the specific provisions within the home rule procedures, copy him on it. And then there's 2 potential options. So one, once he got a hold of that letter, he would make some calls on our behalf to make sure that it was seen, and get a feel for whether or not it would be reviewed, never mind accommodated, meaning, you know, the Attorney General may just be so busy that she just brushes him away. We have a couple of other options. The municipalities committee within the state is actively filing quite a bit of legislation for municipal relief and special legislation related to COVID-19, and he thinks that this would fit under there. And the municipalities committee could draft us legislation specifically just for us, amending that particular section of the charter, and thereby, so where it previously said 16 months, it would go to add 8 weeks to that, so 24 months, and where it was 18 months, it would allow us 26 weeks. And, you know, he said he would work with the municipalities committee in order to get that if we were not going to get any sort of resolution from the Attorney General's office. So that's some good news. The bad news is I'm going to ask for a volunteer to write that letter that I could sign. I can give you the specific legislation. I can give you the specific deadlines that we have. Carrie's raising her hand. Thank you. I appreciate that. I will connect with you directly and just I'll give you I isolated the deadlines that I think we are going to need an extension on. And you already know where the specific legislation is. So I would very much appreciate that, and thank you. Okay. So action item, Carrie's going to help me on that, and we'll put a letter copying Senator Feeney, and we'll see what sort of resolution we get from there. I'll probably copy Lauren as well, just so she. Actually, maybe I feel like if I copy her on it, then she knows she has the potential for another 60 days, and maybe I don't want to make her aware of that just yet.
You can always share it with her later without actually CCing her on the letter itself.
That might be a better
If you wanted
move.
to email it to her at some point, but
Yeah, that might be a better move. I did actually invite her to this meeting. I did not receive a response to that request, so I'm trying. Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. That's the update. So we'll make an attempt to get a 60-day extension. There's no guarantee, and if not, we just may have to move a little bit quicker on certain things. So that's all. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. All right. Moving on. A couple hours ago, I sent around a PDF of a snapshot of an Excel spreadsheet. Last week, we had talked about within the financial and fiscal provisions of our charter. I think it was Sandy made a recommendation to use North Attleboro's as a guide for what we would like to accomplish. I think I screen shared with you last week where I had started kind of outlining what the major sections or processes were within their charter, and I expounded on that a little bit and put them in chronological order, especially when I'm looking at process improvement. I always like to see it laid out chronologically, and I thought other people might as well. But why don't we just kind of start with the major sections of North Attleboro, and we'll take them section by section. If anybody had any recommendations to changes with respect to who is doing what and when, if they want things added or removed, things that aren't applicable. There are a couple of things in here that are not applicable. I think specifically there's reference to they've got their own municipal electric company. Things of that nature obviously will come out, but if there are certain things in there that you did not see that you'd like to see, or you don't agree with being there, let's just run through them really quickly. If nobody has any objection, I'm going to go through this chronologically in accordance with the spreadsheet I sent out, unless somebody feels very strongly doing it another way. Okay. If it gets too confusing, we can just go back and do it in the section order. Starting with section 6.1, the town manager will give to the department heads. He will develop guidelines for budget requests and present an initial budget schedule. They do not have a specific time frame. Hang on 1 second. Dave Heaney froze, needs to drop and rejoin. Although I can see him. Nope, now he's frozen. Sorry, Dave. I'll let you back in when I see you. All right, Sandy, can you see him? Can you see the participant list? Can you let him in if I'm reading and I have my head down? Thank you. Okay, so sorry, going back to the very first step in the process, the town manager will develop guidelines for budget requests and put an initial budget schedule together. With regards to the when, I just put this prior to budget season. There is no time frame stipulated. Didn't really seem like it needed one, especially given the fact that there was a next requirement from the department heads to give to the town manager their budget requests that are consistent with his guidelines and schedules, or her guidelines and schedules, and those are due no later than December 31st of the upcoming fiscal year. Anybody have any issues with that section?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Section 6.2, the town manager with the town council and the school committee will hold a joint meeting to review the financial condition of the town, revenue and expense forecasts, and any other relevant information. And that should take place no later than January 15th of the year. Anybody have anything they'd like to change or see differently there? Okay, seeing none. Moving on, 6.3, the town manager in consultation with the town council president will give to the town committee, sorry, I'm getting a text from Dave Heaney. He actually can't close it because he's frozen, so I think we've lost him. We did lose him. I don't know whether to keep going. I feel bad like leaving him behind. But we could be going all night at this rate.
He's like me, he's rebooting his computer.
Probably. Is yours acting up still, Dave?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Hopefully we don't lose Kevin. I like the fact that he froze the middle of a point you were making. I had to assure everybody that I didn't specifically cut you off.
Maybe it was done on purpose.
I swear to God, I did not. Anybody have an opinion whether we should just keep going? This could take all night.
Yeah, I say we keep moving.
I think
They'll join us
We
when
keep
can.
moving, because we did go over this before,
Okay.
so he
All
can jump in.
All right, I just want to be fair to everybody. Okay, moving on. 6.3, in consultation with the town council president, and that had more to do with the format in which the information was provided to town council. Town manager will provide to the town council and the school committee. Oh, David's here. Okay. Proposed operating budget, the budget message, and the 5-year capital budget, which shall include quite a number of provisions. High-level overview is proposed goals and expenditure for the current operation of the fiscal year coming up, detailed for each fund by department, long-term goals and capital expenditures for each fund by department for the following year, proposed goals, anticipated income and expense, profit and loss, and for the ensuing year for each utility or other enterprise fund. Preliminary budget message shall explain the budget in both fiscal terms and work programs, showing a link between those, outlining the proposed financial policies of the town for the coming year and the impact of those policies on future years. Description of the important areas of the budget, summarizing the town's debt position, including things that are likely to affect the ability to raise resources through debt measures, and any other information that the town manager seems reasonable. And that would be due to the town council and the school committee no later than February 15th. Did anybody have any issues or changes with that section? Okay, seeing none, moving along. In conjunction with the budget, moving to 6.7A, the town manager will submit to the town council the capital improvement program for any capital improvements that meet the criteria within 6.7A. And that section basically stipulates that that'll be coordinated with the annual budget, which is why I moved it up higher into the process order. I'm assuming there's probably no issues with that. Okay, moving on. 6-4 and 6.7B, the town manager will give to town council the final proposed budget, a 5-year capital improvement plan, and a budget message that is due no later than the first town council meeting in April. Everybody seem reasonable? Okay. 6.5A and 6.7C, the town council will hold public hearing on the proposed budget and the capital improvement plan, and that's upon receipt of the budget by the town manager, provided there's 14 days notice, which I'm pretty sure for a public hearing is the statutory number of days that they have to give. So probably not something we can amend. Everybody's okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. 6.5B and 6.7C, the town council will adopt the annual budget and capital improvement plan, and that's to take place no later than 15 days prior to the start of the fiscal year. Assuming everybody's okay with that as well.
Yep.
Okay. Subsequent to that, in 6.5 or 6-5C, the town manager will give to town council a comparison of the final budget to the actual budget where it stands. And that will be provided at the midpoint of the fiscal year and more often as requested by town, I'm assuming by town council. I actually didn't write that here, but I'm assuming it's by town council. Everybody's good with that? Good. 6-8, the town manager will give to town council a long-term financial forecast that'll include 5-year financial forecast of town revenue, expenditures, general financial condition of the town. The North Attleboro one just states that it'll happen annually. I can't imagine it's done at the same time as the annual budget. I think it would probably complicate matters. Not complicate matters, but be a significant amount of work, and it's probably taking place off cycle. I'm assuming probably at some point subsequent to the passing of the budget. Does anybody have any changes or recommendations? Think there should be a specific deadline to that? Seeing none. And then 6-9, the town council will hire an auditing firm, independent auditing firm, to audit all the town accounts. That is required to take place no later than 30 days after the start of the fiscal year. Seems reasonable to everyone? Okay. And then the next 4 are all as needed. 6-6A, there are provisions for supplemental or emergency appropriations for things that were not foreseen during the budget process, and any emergency funding that needs to take place, and that would happen on an as-needed basis. Similarly, in 6-6B, could be a reduction of appropriations if the revenue of the town is not in line with where forecasts are and cuts need to be made. And 6.6, is that B, or did I make a mistake? Yeah, that last one should be C. Next to transfer of appropriations, In the event, I think with the town council approval, they can transfer appropriations from one department or operating budget to another. Town manager shall report transfers to the town council within 7 days. And let's see. There were other provisions in there. There's an area we'll need to strike. There's reference to the municipal light department and the electric department. Is that the same? Or is there actually a municipal light and an electric department in North Attleboro? Does anybody know? It doesn't matter. Those areas of that section would obviously need to be struck as inappropriate. Any recommendations for changes within those sections?
No.
Okay. And finally, 6-10, town council to town manager. Town council will establish the reasonable standards related to the management of the financial systems and practices. I'm assuming that would happen in conjunction with the transition provisions as well, at least initially. But this would also allow them to amend their practices as needed on an ongoing basis. So, and that's just as needed. Anybody have any other issues or changes? Everybody's happy with that process?
Fine.
We're easy. Okay.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
I don't think we ever decided about the capital improvements. If there was gonna be a committee, we said, I mean, the North Attleboro Charter, it's clear, it's all about the town manager's responsibility. I thought we were gonna sort of leave it up to the new government to decide whether they wanted a committee. Should we open up that language a little bit to allow that?
Sure. Let me make a note.
I mean, I don't know what we ended up deciding. I know some felt that the committee should be at least mentioned, but not necessarily outlined who was in it. So I don't think we ever actually came to a decision. It doesn't really matter to me too much, but just thought we wanted to finish our discussion from last time.
So this would be up to the town council to decide whether or not they want to form a committee or leave it up to the town manager, correct?
Yeah, I think that's where we landed last time to.
Okay.
I thought the issue came up, I thought Kerry raised an issue regarding the separation of duties between the executive and the legislative branch when it came to the capital committee. I think we were talking about having members of the town council possibly sitting on that capital committee, and that's how
If we don't mention it in the charter, I don't think we need to answer that question. If we don't prohibit something in the charter, it's sort of presumed you can do that, I think. I don't think there's anything that prohibits anybody from creating a capital improvements committee if they want that. I just don't know that we want to name who's going to be on it in the charter.
Okay.
So we're okay with, do we want to have it addressed within the charter, or do we want to just leave it open-ended? We could have something to the effect of, the town well, who would appoint who sits on our capital improvements committee? It was I forget exactly now. It was
I think in Norton, currently, town manager.
Yeah, hang on, I'm looking to find the section within ours. Yeah, there shall be a capital improvement committee which will consist of a member of FinCom, a member of the Board of Selectmen, one member of the school committee, one member of the planning board, along with the town manager. So maybe we just need to stipulate in the Well, somebody's got to have to make the decision as to whether there's a committee or that power is vested to the town manager.
Town manager could create a committee to help him do this. I can't imagine the town manager is going to do this all by himself.
Okay. All right. So town manager.
Do we want to leave that up to the town manager to decide, or did we want to have the town council have some input as to whether the committee should be formed?
What's your thought, Carrie?
I mean, my concern at the last meeting was more about the town council sitting on the committee. I suppose there's nothing in the bylaw, there's nothing prohibiting the council from forming it through bylaws. The legislative branch does that all the time, forms new committees and departments.
Okay. What if we left it to the effect of, so in the capital improvements, section 6.7, again, but that's leaving it up to the town manager to determine whether or not he wants or she wants a committee.
Well, it says the town manager shall prepare a capital improvements program. So maybe somewhere in there, and we don't have to write it, we can ask Lauren to do that. We can just ask her to somewhere within that section, give the town council the option of creating a capital planning committee to assist the town manager, maybe.
Okay.
I have a question, Laura.
Sure.
Is what we're trying to decide whether or not this falls under the responsibility of the town manager, or if we want the town council to be able to do it? Is that the question we're trying to answer right now? Whether it's up to the discretion of the town council or the town manager?
Right now, it seems to be at whose discretion it is to create the capital improvements committee.
That's the question we're trying to answer right now.
Yes.
Well, I think we're giving the town council the option to form it. I don't think we're taking anything away from the town manager. The town manager, if we keep it the way North Attleboro does it, the town manager is responsible for the capital improvement program. And if he or she wants to create a committee to help him or her come up with that program, I think there's nothing in here that prevents them from doing that. We're already giving the town manager pretty broad authority to arrange his or her departments the way he or she wants. So I think the question we're trying to answer is, do we want the town council to also have discretion to tell the town manager to create a committee and to assist the town manager?
By having it if we put it in the charter and we say there will be a capital improvements program, and the town manager is going to run it, so there's no that in effect is not giving the town, then he has to do it.
He needs a program, but it doesn't say anything about a committee, and I think that's where we were getting hung up with last time, was whether or not there should be a committee that is named, and who should create that committee.
Yeah, I guess I'm coming down on, it's up to the town manager to develop the program. And like everything else the town manager does, if he doesn't do a great job at it, then the town council should tell him to follow the people or whatever it takes to make it a viable program. But, spelling it out how the town council has to, or has the right to create it, I don't really see a need for that.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, David. I'm not sure we need it, but that's coming from somebody who doesn't feel strongly about whether or not there is an official committee. I think there were some people who were concerned that there should be a committee and wanted to make sure that there was room for that. I just assume that the town manager run the program the way she's going to.
Or he. I saw Laura smile up, I think.
I did that on purpose.
And I appreciate it.
I keep falling into the he, I shouldn't.
I've been doing the same. Okay,
I don't know
so,
of any female town managers in Massachusetts.
So I think we tend to do it because we have a E currently, so.
so the town manager may have the option, to create a capital improvement committee for to assist the town manager in preparing the capital improvements program. So something as simple as that. Not a will, just a he has the option to. She has the option to.
I like that.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments or questions with regards to the budget process itself?
I actually had one more, and I'm just trying to find it. But I think we say, what do we say? We say that's to be done 15 days prior to town meeting. That's how it is in the North Attleboro.
Town meeting or the fiscal year?
I'm sorry, the fiscal year, I'm sorry.
Yeah. That would be in 6-5B.
Okay, 15 days prior to start. Okay, all right. You know what, I was getting myself hung up on, I was looking at the language in our current charter and talked about how we can make basic adjustments, amendments to the budget up to the town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, that's really a different issue altogether, I suppose, so.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Everybody else is good? Okay. Recommendations, do we vote on this now, or do we wait to hear back from, or do we wait to get a draft charter and vote on it then in its entirety?
Just as soon get this and send as much as we can to her, and maybe it's easy enough to incorporate it since we're taking so much from the existing charter.
Yeah. I'm basically going to, tell her to refer to North Attleboro, and I will give her the, not even, there haven't really been any, but just the process, itself, and just that one amendment to the Capital Improvements Committee, or the use of Capital Improvements Committee, obviously striking areas that aren't applicable to us. So I'm sorry, that was a recommendation to just hold the vote until we get the draft charter back.
No, I was saying, let's hold the vote now and send it to her to add into the draft charter, since I'm not sure when we're gonna get it. Or where she is in the process. Maybe if they're still drafting it, then let them add as much as possible for us to review later.
Okay, all right. So I will take a motion to accept the budget process outline that we have just discussed with the, I'm not even going to say that. So just accept the budget process we have just gone over and outlined and agreed to.
So moved.
Second that.
Okay. All right, going one by one. Sandy?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
David Wren?
Yes.
Dave Heaney?
Yes.
Carrie Schneider?
Yes.
Janie Goodwin?
Yes.
And Denise?
Yes.
I am also a yes. We are unanimous on that motion. All right. We accomplished something. Yes. Okay. Again, I wish I had more to discuss, but I'm glad there's at least another section within the charter. And I actually kind of foresee this one. I think we can at least preliminarily discuss or go over the options that are available to us. I foresee us having to be thoughtful and considerate about the number and time frame of some of the provisions within the citizens' participation measures. So just kind of as a rough overview, I had sent around the Collins Guide overview of the various citizen participation mechanisms that are available in Massachusetts charters. They don't all have to be used. We could amend them in any way that we see fit or is appropriate for our town. The one thing that's important is because we are changing the legislative body from the resident voters to a town council, and we're taking away the power of the people to vote on quite a few measures. We have to provide them some mechanisms other than an election to give the voters a voice and to have them be able to impose their will. So starting kind of with the least regimented, I guess, is either a public or free petition, and it basically allows any individual voter or group of voters to, it's basically a suggestion to ask a measure to be considered by the town council. It's non-binding. The town council doesn't really have to do much of anything if they don't want to. Within that, there are citizen participation measures where it's basically like within the process of our meeting where we just have a public forum or public comment section on the agenda, and anybody, any member of the public is allowed to get up and speak, provided it's within that portion of the agenda. It is at the will of the town council president whether to hear people and whether to have any deliberation on that public comment. So those are the two more non-binding areas. Getting into an initiative, it's basically where a group or individual can demand that a measure be passed. And that requires a certain number of votes to get that up for discussion. And typically what happens is it gets you a hearing, and the town council may decide to take action on it. Sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Sorry, nope. That is to actually force a measure to be passed. It requires a certain number of signatures. There is no time frame in order to do so. It's at the will of the public and what they may want to see. Generally, the number of signatures required can run anywhere from 5 to 15% of registered voters to get a initiative petition put up. The petition itself goes then to town council, who will review it as written and render an opinion as to whether or not it is proper form and can actually be lawfully adopted by the town council were it up for discussion. The town council has within a certain period of time to review that petition, can choose to pass it as submitted, can choose to make a change to it, pass a measure that's in lieu of the initiative measure that's been presented. And if they do so, that's deemed a rejection of the initial measure, or they can literally outright reject it. From that point, if the group putting together the petition chooses to or wants to take it a next step forward, there can be a supplementary petition where they have to go back and get some additional signatures. And what that does is it forces the town council to open it up to a vote, generally under a special election, and that needs to be declared within a certain period of time. There's a publication of the measure that they want to put up for a vote. It goes on a ballot in the form of a question, and in most cases, in order to be effective, there is also a minimum number of threshold of people that has to vote on the supplemental initiative question that has been taken to special election. And that's required in order to ultimately pass. The next option that's available to citizens is referendum. It basically is a demand for reconsideration of a recently passed measure by the town council. It doesn't necessarily have to be a revision. It could be they want to force a change to the some section of the measure, or it can be outright request to rescind it in its entirety. And that is also generally subject to a petition of number of signatures anywhere between 5 and 15% of the registered voters of the town. This one, however, because it is in respect of a measure that's been passed, that measure is essentially put on hold if within 21 days a petition is filed with the town clerk with the correct number of signatures demanding the reconsideration of the measure that's been passed. So because time is of the essence and they don't want to delay the work of town council and the government itself, that is we need to determine what a reasonable amount of time, in addition to what is a reasonable percentage of votes, in order to demand rescission of that measure. So at that point, the town council can then choose to reconsider the motion. They can decide to rescind it outright then and there, or they can decide to send it to an election to vote on at a special election, at either a special election or the next regular town election. That one may or may not have a threshold provision. In looking at a couple of towns, North Attleboro being one of them, there was no threshold requirement for the special election in that case. In order to ultimately rescind it, it's just majority. So if it passes, then the measure is considered rescinded or amended in the manner in which the petition was formed. The last option, which you probably are familiar with, well, actually, let's go through a few things. So there are certain areas that are not eligible for initiative or referendums. They vary from town to town. I looked at the model charter. They had a very small, limited number of reasons why, or things that were not eligible for rescission. Some towns have a little bit more, but generally it has to do with the budget as a whole, capital improvements budget. Any emergency measures is not eligible for a referendum or initiative. Any appropriation of the town debt or debt service, appropriations of funds related to collective bargaining agreements. The model charter basically stipulates that they should not be allowed to amend or change contracts, salaries related to town officials or employees. It goes on to state that a measure that has been up for referendum or initiative, you can't use an initiative or referendum to reverse it. That seems to be kind of the general list of things that are ineligible, but we'll have to take those one by one and figure out what we want to allow citizens to have control over submitting any sort of referendum or initiative programs. The last option available to citizens is recall. Recall is, we have a recall provision within our current charter. It requires, there's quite a few actually stipulations, and it has to be a elected official. They have to have been in office for at least 6 months. There are requirements, so it requires 15% of the registered voters in order to recall. And then there's also a provision in our current charter where you cannot have 50% or more of the signatures from any one precinct. And there's a few others within there, but it essentially it is to recall an elected official for basically whatever grounds. I think that they have less than 6 months left in their term. It doesn't allow them to recall them at that point either. So we're going to have to determine the time frame. They have to basically stipulate their desire to recall. They submit that to the town clerk. Town clerk makes the official aware, and then there's a certain period of time designated in order to collect the appropriate number of signatures. And then a recall election would happen if the correct number are obtained and certified by the town clerk. Couple of things that's important to note, that the charter lays out the specific provisions because most of these are going to be applicable to town council. We don't want town council setting their own parameters of mechanisms that are going to be used to challenge them. So these are all going to have to be determined by us, and they should be. Like I had said, I think some of the more difficult parts are going to be determining the appropriate threshold that a person or a group is going to need to meet. It needs to be low enough to be achievable and high enough to discourage kind of widespread usage or eliminate the use for frivolous reasons, I guess is the best way of putting it. We also need to take into account the time frame in which a group or person is required or going to be able to collect signatures. We have to think about it. We can compare what other towns are doing, but I think it's important that we consider our town's specific voting history and patterns, which are not fabulous. So I think comparing us to a town like Amherst that tends to be very civic-minded, and they get larger voting percentages, we're going to need to be very thoughtful about the percentages that we are going to require within the charter, and taking into account specifically the town of Norton. Whereas, a lot of times we may look at other charters and, kind of determine what best practices are. I don't think it's appropriate in this instance because Norton is unique and we have to treat it as such. Does anybody have any questions, anything they want to talk about now with respect to the citizen participation measures?
I guess I'd just come back to an earlier question that we did pose to Lauren initially, and she gave a really quick answer, but I haven't been able to find any backup. So I'd like to just ask her again about limiting an incumbent from appearing on a recall ballot to replace herself.
Yes.
Other states allow that prohibition.
Yes.
Because if you're not recalled, you retain the seat.
Yes.
So,
I actually
anyway.
I know the answer to this one.
yeah.
So, according to Lauren, the person being recalled has a constitutional right to run for that same seat.
So I know she said that, but I couldn't find it in the Constitution of Massachusetts, and it's definitely not in the U.S. Constitution.
Okay.
So that's why the question remains in my mind.
Okay. So, interestingly, our current charter specifically precludes an official who is up for recall from running for the same seat in the recall election. And, we asked, well, why is it there if it's constitutionally protected? Right. And, kind of you got the lawyer smile answer, and it's there because it's never been challenged.
Right. No. Yeah. She said that to us.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't find any answer looking, doing some legal research on Westlaw. There is a provision that talks about eligibility for election, but it leaves it up to the statutes, and I couldn't find a statute that because we have eligibility standards for running for election all the time.
Okay.
You have to be a registered voter, for example.
Yeah.
Most. And we put local limits on that. So anyway, I guess it's still a question in my mind.
Okay. So you wanted to cite
I can totally see Norton falling into a Fall River problem.
Falling into a what?
A Fall River problem. Like I get the political arguments that there shouldn't have been so many people challenging the seat, but I don't think you can fault other candidates. I think I think the outcome of a recall election, if you don't recall them, they retain the seat. But if I'm the only one who's concerned about this, then we shouldn't ask her. Honestly, if other people are totally fine with having them appear on the ballot, there's no point in pursuing.
As someone that was born and raised in Fall River, I would like to be able to avoid that situation. So I would be supportive of going back and revisiting that question.
I also agree. I feel fairly strongly.
I feel like we put her on the spot because we asked her right in the meeting, and that was the answer that she gave us. And so I just would like some more information. Anyway.
No, I agree with both of you. I would not be inclined to allow somebody who is up for recall to run for that same seat. But
and if it's there because it hasn't been challenged, then why not stick it in there if we're all in agreement or trying to avoid that?
I personally don't feel strongly one way or the other. It doesn't bother me, I guess.
does anybody feel strongly the other way? Jane?
No, I don't feel strongly the other way. I don't feel strongly either way. My guess is, even if we throw it in there, the actual violation of it, were someone to challenge it, would be their constitutional right. So I even though it hasn't been challenged, we could put it in, but I think if someone did want to challenge it, especially after Fall River, I think they would have a precedent to do so.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So I just think the nature of a violation of that would be someone's constitutional right, not necessarily putting it in or taking it out. So I don't feel strongly either way. It doesn't bother me either way.
There was at least one other chart that we reviewed that I know had language in there preventing that. I don't remember which town it was, but I remember marking it in just on my notes with me right now. So I know that there's another town, at least one other town that had language that was very clear that said they couldn't rerun for election.
Plymouth in particular was silent on the matter. It did not weigh in one way or the other. Westward, Dedham, and Stoughton all allowed them to run, and in the case of Dedham, they automatically go on the ballot. They didn't even have to pull papers.
The person being recalled automatically goes on the ballot?
Yep,
I saw that on a couple of others.
yep. This was Dedham. No nomination required, automatically goes on the ballot. whereas Stoughton, Westwood, those are the few that I had made a note of at the time I was reading. I started keeping track of who had what. Plymouth in particular was silent, but Denise is right. There is at least one or two other towns that we read that specifically precluded it. And the thing that was interesting about Fall River is the committee that was trying to recall the mayor challenged him running. And the court said, well, your charter doesn't specifically preclude them from running, but did not weigh in on whether or not, the question wasn't asked, does he have the constitutional right to run? So they never weighed in on it because
Right,
the
he
charter
had the right to because it didn't preclude
necessary.
him. So
specifically
yeah.
did not, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, if the charter did specifically preclude him, then we would at least have precedent and the courts would have weighed in, I'm assuming, because the mayor probably would have fought it. Or may
Yeah, I
have tried
couldn't
to
find
fight it.
any court cases either. But again, I'm not a municipal attorney.
Is that something we should go to the state to ask the question? Like, would it be more Healy's office, whatever it is? Should we go to her
She could
office?
probably answer, although she probably won't right now. I couldn't
She's
find it on
busy.
the Secretary of State's website, but they certainly deal with all the elections, but not necessarily the eligibility. So,
I mean, they do have the ability for you to ask questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Onto worth a shot, I guess.
Can I add something to the language of our charter? It says the appointment of the person recalled, no person who has been recalled from an office or shall be appointed to any town office within 2 years of after such recall or such resignation. I don't really feel strongly about whether they can run or not, but I don't like that language in our charter. I don't think that we should, if someone's recalled from something, that we should keep them off of every other position for 2 years.
Is
Yeah,
it
that
the
actually
every
wasn't-
other part of that you didn't like? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna ask, is it the every other position part that you don't like? The timing, the fact that they're kept off of anything at all? What part of that didn't you like?
Yeah, I just think it's pretty harsh, right? You get recalled from, I don't know, say, planning board, and now you can't serve on, you can't be appointed for anything. You can't serve on the IDC. It's just for 2 years. I guess all of it just seems very extreme to me.
Particularly if you could be recalled for no reason, you don't have to necessarily state a reason to recall unless we say you have to state a reason for a recall. So, yeah,
And you can
I totally see what you're saying. So.
be terrible in one position, or people can think you're terrible in one position, but be fine in another position. So to say you can't be on anything for 2 years, just again, seems pretty extreme.
I would agree. It probably should be more narrowly tailored.
I think my general feeling is, you could be recalled because perhaps your decisions don't flow with the rest of the town, how the rest of the town feels about your decisions, say on the planning board. It doesn't mean that you didn't have good points, it's just that maybe you're against the grain with the rest of the town, and you didn't do anything wrong, you're just, the rest of the town didn't agree with you, perhaps, so why would that preclude you from being on any other type of committee, which may be not even related to the type of decisions you were making for the position you got recalled. So, I don't think I think we tend to think of recalls as people not doing a good job in their role, and may not even be the case. It could just be that their opinion is out of sync with the rest of the town, or the majority of the town.
Anybody else have an opinion on? Nope. Okay. All right, so I think for the next meeting. If nobody else has any discussion on citizen participation measures, if you can come prepared next meeting to discuss what you feel are, well, one, if we want to enact all of these measures, which I'm assuming we do, it's in our best interest to provide the general public with as many options as possible, given the fact that we are potentially taking away their vote on a myriad number of areas, including the budget. So why don't we, if everybody can do some homework, review a few charters, Amherst, North Attleboro, Watertown in particular, I think all had very good citizen participation mechanisms. I would focus less probably on the percentages that they use. I want you to consider what you think is reasonable and appropriate for Norton, given the typical voting history in this town, and what you think are reasonable thresholds that are not too easy to achieve, but yet not so hard that nobody's ever going to be able to accomplish it. For example, right now, our charter requires, is it 21 days or 30 days for recall? But you need 15% of the registered voters. And to give you some sort of measurement or comparison, to get the charter passed, we needed 20% of the voting population signatures, and had no time frame other than to get it on the ballot itself, and that took better than 6 months in order to accomplish, with multiple people working on it.
Or that was actually 15%.
The Charter Commission was? I thought it was 20.
Then we needed 15%.
Oh, my apologies. So recall is the same.
Yeah, so it took us 15 weeks of active collecting after, a good amount of preparation, sort of setting things up. I will say, though, that I was kind of going back through the counts that I had written down. After around 3 weeks, we had close to 1,000, and then it significantly drops off after that. So, for where we were with the 21 days, we were about a little over 5%. Well, I say 5% with the understanding that you have to get like about a 20% buffer.
Yeah.
So understanding that when you say, 15% of the signatures, it's really, that was 1,900. We got 24 and change, and that was just barely enough to cover the 1,900. So there is about a 20% error margin in your signatures that you have to account for as well. So just to kind of give you the perspective on where we were at, and that was with, somewhere between, I'd say 30 to 50 volunteers we had collecting out there. So certainly we had the manpower, we had the desire, but we did not have a whole lot of locations to go to in terms of really, easily getting those signatures. So,
Sandy, that was 21 days it took us to get 1,000 signatures, or 5%?
I had written 967 after 3 weeks. So, again, that's more than 5%, but that would have probably been about 5% with the error margin.
Okay.
This 800 would be what I would have looked for 5%.
Okay. All right.
I would
That's
also
actually
say, though,
helpful.
that some of these things we want to be harder to do, because we do want to dissuade frivolous, recalling somebody because, you don't like them, or they work someplace, or they donated to somebody, stuff like that. So I think we want to make sure that we're not making it too easy just because we have some voter apathy in town. And we don't want to reward that by making it too easy.
Yeah, I would say, though, that the 3 weeks that we worked round the clock, you know, getting those signatures
Oh,
down.
yeah. No, I was doing it too.
Think, oh, we got 1,000 signatures in 3 weeks, that was somehow easy. That was,
No, what I'm saying is, think about what it is we're talking about. So putting a charter commission on the ballot, I think we kind of want to be easier than to recall somebody, right? I mean, I think we need to be cognizant of what section we're looking at and not say, for all of them, we're only gonna require this many. That's my only point.
Yeah, on the flip side, the charter commission, I think for most people is they're willing to sign it because it's just a formal committee, right? A commission.
Right, it's not.
Whereas a recall, you're gonna have a lot of people that say, I don't want to sign that because I
I don't want,
Exactly.
that's just doing a good job. So it's
I will say that the model charter their recommendations were rather broad, obviously, but they did stipulate that recall ranges tended to run a little bit higher than initiatives or a referendum.
Yeah, and that was, honestly, that was the only point I wanted to make, was just to consider what section it is we're looking at.
I'm in agreement with Kerry in general that, I think a recall should be tougher, but I am in general, and not particularly in the way we're laid out, and, there's no common place to go get signatures, and in the nature of this town, I in general in favor of very low thresholds comparably to what I saw in most other towns. That was my general feeling, but.
Yeah, but I don't think, so given our current recall, they needed 15%, I think, within 21 days.
Yeah.
I don't see it as being achievable.
It doesn't feel like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a bit easy and practical, I guess, but can I just pipe up real quick? I just had when I was looking at the Amherst charter today, they also had, I was just intrigued by this, but they also had and Lori had a great document with the 4 different types, but they also have an open meeting of the residents, so you can force a kind of a town hall meeting, if you will. I'm not saying I'm for or against it, but I just thought it was kind of interesting. And particularly when you think about maybe the politics of this whole process and how that might play. Perhaps it's worth discussing.
We're also looking at a considerably more civic-minded community in Amherst, too.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, I'm just thinking that, we're taking away people's say in a lot of things in some ways, going to town council. So I'm thinking of the politics of it a little bit too.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, we want to
I throw it out there, but I thought it was intriguing. And I think it's the only charter I think that has something like that.
Amherst has quite a few
Yeah, they're very unique.
unique, yeah.
I want to move here.
Hey guys, so just on the periphery of this, I've heard a couple of different comments to this effect tonight, and David, I'm just going to jump in because you just said it there too. A couple of different people have said we're taking away people's voice, or we're taking away people's ability to do something. I think it's really important to note that that's not what we're doing, right? A, we're not doing anything. We're making a recommendation that people will get to vote on. So that's an important thing. And B, people are going to be just as able to influence their government, and I would argue even more so, right, by the fact that they're only now voting for a limited number of people who are then representing them. They don't have to vote on every issue. They don't have, right? So they'll be able to have their voice much more effectively and efficiently communicated throughout the process. And I think it's important that and it's not just for the optics of it, but and maybe I'm the one that really strongly feels this way, but what we're doing is making it better and making it easier for people to get out there. So it's not just the 40 people that happen to be able to get to town meeting, but everyone's able to be represented throughout this process. And I don't mean to get up on a high horse about it, but we're gonna need to be able to communicate this very clearly to people so that they can vote on it. And I think if we're using this language, I know there's going to be other people out there that are using this language and meaning it in a malicious way and trying to malign the process. So it's important that we are very clear in our meetings and beyond with what we're doing and why.
Dave, you have articulated exactly what was going through my head, so I totally agree.
Yeah, and,
I'll get down off the soapbox now.
yeah, just to clarify, when I mentioned that, I'm thinking more of how it's gonna be perceived by groups within.
Yeah, totally. I know none of us feel that way, but it's going to be so easy for somebody to say, see, they're even saying this in the meetings, right? And that's just not what we're doing. So now I'll step back down again off the soapbox.
That's fine. No, I agree that it's the, and I probably should have been clearer when I was outlining those provisions that it is the perception of taking the voter's voice away. So, good point. Very good point. Thank you.
Good point, Albert.
Okay, so our homework for next week, God willing, or not next week. When is our next meeting scheduled for?
May 4th.
4th. Okay, and we kept that. That's supposedly a rough date that I know the town was looking at. Let's presume we're going to be meeting via remote participation. God willing, we will have a draft charter to review. We will work on getting a letter to the Attorney General seeking a extension to some of our deadlines. Our homework for next week is to review, I think, those charters that I've outlined, specifically Amherst, North Attleboro, and I think it was Watertown. I would specifically look at the charters that we've read that specifically relate to town council's forms of government. Those are the ones that are going to contain the citizen participation measures. And come up with what you feel are reasonable thresholds and timeframes to meet some of those deliverables within those mechanisms. Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Kevin, you're really quiet. You're freaking me out. And he's frozen. I swear I didn't do that either. Everybody good?
Yep.
Anybody have anything else that they want to talk about? Seeing nothing? All right, next meeting is going to be May 4th, 2020. We will hopefully review a draft charter and finalize or at least start deliberating on citizen participation options. If we got through it all in one meeting, that would be great. I could see that potentially being an area where we have some back and forth with regards to what we feel are adequate numbers. So we'll at least start it next week. And if there's no other topics, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Denise. Seconded?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Keith. And all in favor, Sandy?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Kevin? Oh, wait, we don't have to do
Yes.
the roll call. Everybody raise your hand. We're adjourned. Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Have a good night, guys. Thank you very much.